Obviously, I'm a Yankees fan, so I'd love to see him.
It's almost like legacy of like the NFL versus.
But I definitely think that Baker could be a really good player for the Panthers moving forward.
Did I say Oreos?
There's a lot of questions I have about Mahomes. Looks like a kid playing Madden.
Turning point in the game is the 13-second drive.
They play very hard, even though they're terrible.
He's a good pick. For sure. He's going to be a good player. But I can't argue against the Ja'Marr Chase pick.
They made moves saying we're going to win this year, at least get into the playoffs.
I'm going with my guy, Corey Seager. So glad.
What's good, y'all? My name is Austin Drummond, and I play rugby for the University of Notre Dame. And you're listening to The Outsider's Opinion with Austin and Kevin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA opinions of the week. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man. You know, each of our teams in different conferences in the NBA, and the man in the East, Austin.
Yeah, so this is a hard question for me, even though I feel like there's an easy answer. And the reason why it's a hard question is because the best team in the NBA, would you agree, is in the East.
Yes.
So for a team outside of the Celtics, I feel like the East is very hard to win because the Celtics are so good.
Yeah, I was having the same thought process too, because the East is not that many great teams compared to the West. However, the best team, like you're saying, is in the East. So to win the East, you have to be better than the Celtics, which is going to be hard to do. But in the West, it's almost surviving just an onslaught of battles every game.
Yeah, because every team that makes the playoffs in the West will have a chance, even if it is small. In the East, I don't really necessarily think that's true because unless there's major injuries to the Celtics, I don't think they're going to lose to a Hornets or a Hawks or any of those teams at the bottom, like the 8 or 7 seed. It'd be even tough to lose to a 4 or 5 seed, especially if a team is like the 76ers and they have some injuries. So that's why it's harder to get into the playoffs in the West 100%, but harder to win, I feel like, is a much tougher question because, I mean, as we saw last night, the Celtics are still the Celtics.
Yeah. Jason Tatum played really well. I know that just what he did because I played him in fantasy last night in this week. But another thing, I think a good comparison that I'm coming up with is the final boss is the Celtics. And the bosses to get to the final boss is not that difficult in the East. But in the West, it's pretty
there's almost like there is no final boss in the West. It's just a lot of hard. I don't even know how to say it.
Because it's
well,
so tough.
Kevin, have you ever played like Super Mario Bros. Or one of those Mario games? Okay, well, and most of them, they end with a castle, right?
Yeah.
So the castle is usually the hardest level of it. So it'd be a lot of easy levels and then the hardest castle in the game. And then the other one would be like there's a world with no. So in Super Mario Bros., there's like the small castles that are halfway through the world, except for like a Bowser's one. So that, I guess the world 8, but easy, would be like the West. But in the or be the East. But in the West, it'd all be the small castles that are definitely hard to beat, but they just aren't the final boss. I mean, there's a lot of different teams that I think have a chance of making it out of the West. It's going to depend not just on injuries, but who's hot at the time because they're so close that one game here and there can really decide an entire series.
Yeah, that's a great explanation on the video games. And yeah, I never played Super Mario Bros. But to me, the West it's just difficult because you have to have a stamina to get to the conference finals and to advance through the conference finals. You don't really need that stamina to get in the playoffs, but you have to be playing well. And even if you are playing well, it's going to be tough to beat the Celtics if they're playing at their best. That's the difficult thing about it. So I think if we're talking about conference to win and it's in the playoffs, I think you have to go with the East just because of what the Celtics are.
Yeah, it's tough for me. It's tough. I'm gonna say the West is harder, and it's just because I feel like over time, like you're beating yourself up every series. That makes that last series extremely tough to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's a battle every time.
Like, I think it can be. I think the Mavs are a playoff team. To me, the Thunder are definitely a playoff team. That matchup may not even be in the Western Conference Finals to get to the finals. That could be just to get.
Well,
to the
that's
Western
my
Conference
point.
Finals. Yeah, I know. Man, I really want to go West, but if you're thinking about winning, I feel like I got to go East just because of what the Celtics are at this point.
Yeah, I get that. It's the West is kind of a death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes, yeah. And it's just one singular death. It's just the Celtics.
Well, it's just, yeah, it's an actual sword instead of just a death of 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
But
that's the point.
It's still going to be hard to make it through either of them because, again, the other one is just, or the West is just a lot of those matchups. And I do think that makes it harder. Again, this is kind of what I talked about for the MLB. Like, would you rather? Was it MLB I was talking about? Like, would you rather? Would you rather have like? Oh yeah, this was about MLB. Would you rather have like playoff games before the playoffs or not? Remember we had that video, and I said it wasn't worth it because you would have the opportunity. You have to try 100% and play your guys every second of the game, or you're not going to win. If you're a good team in the East and you're not the Celtics, those first couple series you can blow teams out and rest your guys at some points. While if you're in the West, it could be a 7-game series, a 7-game series, a 7-game series, all the way to the finals.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. I think it's definitely the West playoffs are going to be really fun. Looking far out, we'll see what happens with the East. The East there will be some matchups, but the 1 and 8 seed or 2 and 7 seed will be incredibly difficult in the West. But yeah, so we're differing. I'm going East and West. I think both are fair options. I know those are the only options, but I don't. It's really tough to think when you really look down.
It's a preference because both could be argued. I do think that there's a fair argument for both.
Yeah,
because of what both teams or both winners will have to go through if it's not the Celtics. But the Celtics, I feel like it is an easy route or easier route than it would be obviously in the West because they don't have to go through themselves.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it, and I think that's how we'll end this episode. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions. Be on the lookout for our coverage as all 4 major leagues are happening right now, and we are doing videos. We are still a daily podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that button. Make it to ring so you get notified when we post an episode. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.